On a blazing summer afternoon in San Diego, sunlight poured over the shipping yards and train tracks like molten gold. Officers moved in and out of the precinct with lazy smiles. Another quiet day. Warm, predictable, almost peaceful. No one sensed what was coming. That fragile calm shattered when Officer Ryan Miller burst through the doors, uniform soaked in sweat and dust, his breath broken, his eyes wild. In his arms was Athena, a wounded police dog, German Shepherd mother, limp, bleeding, her leg mangled, 3 newborn pups barely moving beneath her vest. Voices died. Paperwork froze. Athena wasn't just any K9. She had once been a legend on the force, until she vanished weeks ago. And now she was back, broken, on the edge of death. Within minutes, Ryan was racing her into the bright, overwhelming light of Seaside Veterinary Clinic, the summer sun streaming through the windows as if refusing to let the room dim. The vet's face paled. This isn't from an accident. Someone did this. And if I'm right, the danger isn't over. As Athena trembled on the table, struggling to stay conscious, one of her pups let out a tiny cry, weak, desperate. And in that moment, Dr. Hayes froze, eyes narrowing, realizing something horrifying, and not at all what anyone expected. What he discovered next, under that blazing summer sun, shocked the entire department. Before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Our stories travel farther than we ever imagined. San Diego in midsummer did not merely shine, it scorched. By noon, the sun hovered over the outskirts like a relentless overseer, turning the low stucco buildings pale and brittle, bleaching every rooftop until they glowed like sheets of hammered copper. Heat shimmered above the asphalt in trembling waves, and even the gulls circling inland from the bay flew low and slow, beaten down by the oppressive sky. It was the kind of afternoon where silence felt heavy, as though the whole city held its breath. Ryan Miller sat in his small apartment at the edge of the industrial district, a place where the scent of ocean salt mixed uneasily with oil and rust. At 35, he cut a striking figure even in repose, tall, athletic in the quiet, worn way of a man who'd once relied on his body to survive, broad shoulders filling out his Navy police uniform. His face, square jaw, faint stubble, a thin scar splitting one eyebrow, might once have looked determined, but today it only looked tired. His gray-blue eyes stared through the window blinds at the rows of rusting shipping containers behind the complex. He had been placed on mandatory leave after a hostage operation spiraled out of control. A child's scream still clung to the edges of his memory like smoke. His commanding officer had called it standard procedure, but Ryan could feel the unspoken truth beneath the words. You froze, Miller. You didn't save him. Now the apartment felt too quiet, too bright, too accusatory. Even the ticking wall clock seemed to echo his failure. Then, cutting through the stillness, came a sound, thin at first, like metal scraping against concrete. Ryan blinked, straightening. The noise came again, sharper, frayed at the edges. A cry? A whimper? It was soaked in pain, unmistakably alive. His pulse snapped awake. Even off-duty, even burned out, instinct threaded through him like a wire being pulled taut. Ryan rose, clipped his badge to his belt, holstered his sidearm with a snap, and grabbed his cap from the counter. The heat slammed into him the moment he stepped outside. The sidewalk radiated warmth through the soles of his boots as he crossed the lot, weaving between overgrown patches of sunburned weeds and discarded plastic. The noise grew clearer, a rhythmic clank followed by a trembling, broken whine. The container yard stretched before him like a maze, towering rust-colored walls forming narrow corridors. Shadows clung to their edges despite the blazing sun. The smell of metal and hot concrete filled the air. Ryan rounded a corner and froze. There, collapsed beside a dented blue container, was a female German shepherd. Her sable and black coat, once glossy, but now matted with dust and streaks of dried blood. She wore a faded K9 police harness, straps frayed, the fabric torn. She had been young once, he guessed maybe 4 years old, but exhaustion had carved harsh lines into her frame. Her right foreleg was trapped in a brutal, steel-jawed, poacher's trap, the kind designed to snap bone, not capture animals humanely. It didn't belong in a city. It didn't belong anywhere. The dog growled when he stepped closer, not fiercely, but desperately, her chest heaving with each breath. Yet her amber eyes, bright even through the haze of pain, revealed her true focus. 3 tiny pups pressed against her belly, their fur only just beginning to fluff, their eyes barely open to the blinding noon light. They trembled violently on the scorching concrete, too young to cry loudly, too weak to crawl toward shade. Ryan's throat tightened. He knelt slowly, lowering himself to appear smaller, hands open. "Hey, girl, easy," he murmured. She bared her teeth, not at him, but at anything she perceived as a threat to her newborns. Even broken, she was ready to die before letting anything near them. He looked at the trap again and felt a surge of anger, sharp, focused. Someone had planted it deliberately, someone cruel enough to leave her here to bleed out under the midday sun. The scene felt mythic, a fallen guardian, shielding her children in a battlefield of rust and heat. He reached toward the trap, careful not to startle her. The metal radiated heat, almost too hot to touch. "I'm going to help you," he whispered. The dog's breathing quickened, her muscles tensed, her pups whimpered. Just as Ryan positioned himself to examine the mechanism, a faint sound drifted across the yard. Footsteps, then a low chuckle, then the metallic jingle of tools. The hairs at the back of his neck rose. Someone else was here. Someone returning. He swallowed, eyes scanning the maze of containers. His hand dropped subtly to his holster. He was alone. Off duty. No backup. And still on probationary leave. One wrong move could end his career, or much worse. The footsteps grew clearer, closer. The chuckle became a coarse whisper. "They're coming back." Ryan tightened his jaw, sweat rolling down his temple despite the dry heat. He looked at the injured mother, her pups, the trap, the sun blazing mercilessly overhead. He had seconds. Hide and call for backup, or confront whoever set the trap. The choice coiled in his chest like a live wire as the unknown figures approached. Ryan didn't hesitate. The footsteps echoing through the maze of rusted metal were too close, too careless, too gleeful for his liking. He gripped the edge of the steel trap, slid his belt beneath the hinge, and wedged a rusted rod between the jaws. Sweat dripped from his brow, stinging his eyes as he forced the mechanism apart. It resisted, groaning like an angry animal, before snapping open with a violent jolt. The German shepherd cried out, her whole body trembling, but she didn't snap. Her instinct to protect her newborns outweighed her pain. Ryan scooped her up carefully but urgently, tucking the 3 fragile pups, barely larger than his palms, against her belly. Her fur burned against his arms, both from fever and the punishing summer sun. The container yard felt like a furnace behind him as he ran, boots striking the concrete in uneven, desperate thuds. His uniform clung to him, dust, blood, sweat, but still bore the unmistakable shine of a police officer who couldn't ignore a plea for help, no matter his suspension. Back in his ground-floor apartment, Ryan shut the blinds, though sunlight still bled into the room in warm sheets. He laid a faded blue towel on the tile floor, placing the dog, whose breathing now rasped in harsh pulls, beside the open window where a weak breeze drifted in. He quickly set up a fan, directing the airflow over her shaking body. He fetched his police-issued first aid kit, a reminder of the job that had once defined him. Antiseptic spray, gauze rolls, splints, wipes, trauma shears. Only now, he wasn't patching up another officer. He was trying to save a mother. "Easy, girl," he murmured as he cleaned the wound. The shepherd bared her teeth, though not with malice. Her golden eyes revealed agony braided with unyielding loyalty toward her pups. She was a large dog, close to 60 pounds even in her weakened state, with a noble head and upright ears that twitched at every sound. Her coat, though dusty and blood-stained, hinted at its natural sheen, a mixture of deep sable and warm chestnut. She was perhaps 4 or 5 years old, a working-line German shepherd bred for intelligence and stamina. Ryan hesitated, then said softly, "Athena. I'll call you Athena." The name felt right. Mythic, fierce, a warrior brought low but still guarding her young. Athena watched him, her breath shuddering, but she didn't fight the rinse of antiseptic nor the careful bandaging. Her leg was badly injured, and he crafted a makeshift splint from 2 pieces of thin wood he found near his toolbox, securing them with gauze and tape. She whined, but kept perfectly still whenever her pups whimpered. The 3 little ones lay in a cardboard box lined with old t-shirts. They were tiny creatures, their bodies a patchwork of sable and cream fuzz, their eyes clouded in the hazy blue of newborns. One was noticeably smaller, a female, with a thin squeak instead of a cry, but her determination to nuzzle toward warmth impressed him. The 2 males were sturdier, their paws twitching as if dreaming even now. Over the next days, the apartment transformed. It no longer looked like a bachelor's worn space. It became a sanctuary, overflowing with the sounds of new life. Ryan set alarms to bottle feed the pups with formula he bought from a nearby pet shop, rubbing their bellies gently to help them digest. He spoke to Athena often, perhaps more than to any human in the past few weeks. Athena slowly shifted from wary growls to trusting silence. Occasionally, she nudged his hand with her nose, tentative gestures acknowledging a bond forming between them. Under the warm California sun pouring through the curtains, Ryan found himself telling her stories he hadn't spoken aloud. The hostage call gone wrong, the child he couldn't reach in time, the crushing weight of failure. Athena watched him with steady amber eyes, eyes that carried neither judgment nor pity, only presence. But the world outside did not stand still. Neighbors noticed barking, the occasional sharp yelp, the sight of a uniformed officer carrying bags of canned dog food. Whispered conversations lingered in the hallway. "He's suspended, right? That's the guy from the news." On the 4th afternoon, when sunlight hit the building at just the right harsh angle, Officer Ryan Miller found himself in the hallway with Athena, helping her try to stand on 3 legs. Her recovery was slow. Her body shook under its own weight, but she tried, driven by maternal instinct and the faint beginnings of trust. That was when the elevator doors slid open. Stepping out was Captain Mark Cole, Ryan's superior. A man in his late 50s, tall with a broad, weathered frame built from 3 decades of street duty before administration forced him indoors. His salt and pepper mustache matched his hair, always clipped short. He had creases etched deep between his brows, not from age but from carrying the failures and victories of his officers as if they were his own. His reputation for fairness was overshadowed only by his reputation for strict adherence to protocol. He had once lost a partner in a preventable incident. Since then, rules were not suggestions to him. They were lifelines. He approached with slow, heavy steps, his charcoal gray shirt tucked in neatly, badge gleaming under the hallway lights. "Miller," he said, voice steady as granite. His eyes drifted from Ryan to Athena, down to her splinted leg and the fading bloodstains on the floor. His jaw tensed. "You know the regulations," he continued. "A wounded K-9 with no active assignment, no updated registration, no health clearance. Legally, she's a stray, and strays get reported." Ryan's breath hitched. "Sir, she's recovering, and she's got—" "I saw the pups." Mark lifted a hand, his gaze softening for a heartbeat. "I'm not heartless, but rules are rules. You have 48 hours to make this situation legal." His voice grew firmer. "Otherwise, animal control will take over, and you won't just lose the dogs, Miller. You'll lose your badge." Then he handed over the notice, an internal review form and the number for animal control, before turning away, leaving Ryan in a hallway flooded with golden afternoon light, his heartbeat loud in his ears. Athena eased herself onto the floor beside her pups, watching him with eyes full of gratitude, confusion, and fear. The wall clock inside his apartment ticked relentlessly. The countdown had begun. San Diego's next summer morning arrived with its usual deceptive brightness. Sun-bleached streets, palm fronds swaying lazily, and the hum of traffic drifting like a lullaby over the neighborhoods. Families watered lawns, children rode scooters down warm sidewalks, and joggers moved steadily along the beachfront paths. But inside Ryan Miller's cramped apartment, the air felt heavy, thick with dread and urgency. He stood at his kitchen table, the blinds half drawn though sunlight still pushed its way into the room in golden beams. Spread across the table was a large, worn map of San Diego, creased from years of use. His jaw was set, the lines around his mouth sharper than usual. Every beat of the wall clock behind him reminded him that Captain Cole's 48-hour ultimatum was already slipping away. He traced his finger across the map, past the busy districts, over the residential streets he knew like the back of his hand, and toward the outer industrial edges, where the city loosened and grew wild again. That's when his finger stopped on a faded mark, the old rail storage depot. He remembered passing it during a patrol years ago, a single-story brick warehouse abandoned after a derailment incident. The place had a reputation as a forgotten corner of the city. No residents, no cameras, no reason for anyone to wander in. Perfectly invisible. A place to breathe. A place to hide. Athena lay on a blanket behind him, her breathing steadier than it had been days earlier. She raised her head when he looked at her, ears tilting forward, though her injured leg trembled when she tried to shift. Her pups, 3 newborn bundles of sable fuzz, were curled tightly against her warmth, occasionally whining in their sleep. "I'm not letting animal control take you," Ryan whispered. The memories of past failures gnawed at him, but this time he refused to freeze, refused to fail. He packed quickly, a bag of dog food cans, gauze, saline wash, the spare police first aid kit he wasn't technically supposed to have at home. bottles of formula, a portable battery-powered fan, and a small toolkit. He placed the 3 pups gently into a sling bag lined with soft cloths so they wouldn't roll around. Athena watched him anxiously, head lifting each time he moved. "We're just taking a little trip," he reassured her, tying a lightweight cloth loosely around her harness to hide the K9 emblem. She was too weak to walk far, but she was determined. He opened the door, letting the blazing heat swallow them. They moved through the back lot, where the concrete radiated like a stovetop, and the air smelled faintly of metal and sun-warmed asphalt. Ryan walked with steady, purposeful strides, though his nerves twisted with every step. He could almost feel the eyes of neighbors behind blinds, the murmur of distant gossip, the suspended cop with the dog. But today, no one looked. A delivery truck rumbled by, drowning all attention. It gave him just enough cover to slip out of the complex's back gate and onto the edge of the industrial district. The old rail storage depot stood exactly as he remembered. Faded brick walls, cracked windows, and a sagging metal roof coated in decades of rust. A crooked sign, half fallen, still clung to the wall. Parking for rail personnel only. Nature had begun reclaiming the grounds. Brown weeds clustered around the foundation, and gulls perched along the roofline. The sun hit the building at such an angle that it glowed with a strange, abandoned warmth. Inside, dust floated in the light, like drifting sparks. The warehouse smelled of dry wood, iron, and silence. Broken beams of sunlight pierced through cracks in the roofing, illuminating the curved rails embedded in the floor where old carts once sat. Ryan spread a blanket over a corner where the sun didn't reach, filling bowls with food and water. Athena limped to the blanket, lowered herself with a shaky sigh, and began nudging her pups closer. Just as he began inspecting the sliding door's latch, checking if it could be secured, his phone buzzed. A weather alert. He frowned. A storm? In the middle of July? He stepped outside. The sky that had been a blazing mural of blue and gold was now shifting. Dark clouds rolled in from the coastline, thick and heavy, swallowing the sun. The temperature dropped sharply enough to raise goosebumps on his arms. The wind sharpened, sweeping dust and stray papers across the open lot. Palm trees bent slightly under its force, leaves whipping like warning flags. Summer storms rarely hit the city this hard, and when they did, they came fast. He checked the supplies he had brought, barely enough for a night. Athena needed more saline, fresh bandages, more food for the pups, and definitely the battery fan. Without airflow, the warehouse would turn into a suffocating box if the humidity increased. "I have to go back," he murmured, glancing at Athena. Her amber eyes met his, full of trust and something like fear. "It'll only take 20 minutes, he promised, placing his palm on her head. "Stay here. I'll be right back." Athena's ears twitched. The pups whimpered softly. The wind howled against the warehouse walls. Ryan stepped toward the exit, and then... Crack! The sound tore through the air like a rifle shot. Above him, the warehouse roof groaned. Sheets of corrugated metal trembled violently, rattling against their bolts. A second crack thundered, deeper this time, like a warning from the bones of the building. Ryan spun around. Athena had risen slightly, ears rigid, staring upward. The pups curled against her belly, frightened by the vibration in the floor. Dust drifted down from the rafters in thin curtains. The storm was coming faster than he could move. And the warehouse, old, skeletal, and neglected, was beginning to wake under its weight. The storm descended on San Diego with a violence that felt almost unnatural for a summer night. Neon lights from the downtown district flickered across puddled asphalt as thunder rolled like distant artillery. Rain hammered the windshields of passing cars, turning the streets into rivers of reflective silver. Lightning carved jagged veins across the purple sky. But none of it mattered to Officer Ryan Miller. His breath came in ragged bursts as he sped through intersections, wipers thrashing wildly. His uniform, soaked from retrieving supplies moments before the downpour hit, clung to him like a second skin. The reflective tape on his sleeves and vest caught passing headlights, flashing every time he swerved through another turn. All he could think, all he allowed himself to think, was Athena. Athena and her pups, alone inside a decaying warehouse with a roof already protesting under the earliest winds. His patrol car fishtailed slightly as he entered the industrial district, tires battling the rising water. The storm seemed to recognize him, hurling another crack of lightning across the sky that illuminated the rail yard in a burst of electric white. In that instant, he saw it clearly. The warehouse roof, caved at one corner, beams fractured, sheets of rusted metal hanging down like torn skin. Rain poured through the wound, splashing onto the concrete outside the entrance. "No," he whispered, slamming the car into park before it fully stopped. The wind nearly ripped the door from his hand as he climbed out. He sprinted through the mud and water, slipping once, catching himself on the side of an old rail cart. The ground trembled with each thunderclap. The warehouse entrance was blocked by a pile of collapsed roofing, jagged metal, splintered boards, and broken bricks. He grabbed at the top sheet, pulling with everything he had. Rust scraped across his gloves. The metal groaned, resisting. He braced one foot against the concrete lip and yanked until the slab shifted enough for him to squeeze inside. The sight inside stopped his heart. The warehouse, usually pale with dust, was now a dim cavern filled with harsh, slanted rain. Water streamed through gaps in the roof like broken faucets, and in the far corner, half buried under debris and soaking wet, lay Athena. She had dragged herself across the floor to shield her pups, curling around them even as cold rain and dirt coated her back. Her fur, once thick and warm, clung to her like a dark shroud. She wasn't moving. Not really. Just trembling faintly with each shallow breath. The pups lay beneath her, tiny bodies motionless except for weak twitches. "Athena," Ryan breathed, voice cracking. He splashed through the water, falling to his knees beside her. When he touched her shoulder, she opened one amber eye, clouded with pain, yet fiercely aware. She tried to raise her head, but couldn't. The pups whimpered faintly at the sound of his voice, and the smallest one pressed its nose, blindly into Athena's chest. The scene slammed into Ryan like a blow. The collapsed roof, the broken bodies, the helpless young. And suddenly, he wasn't in a warehouse. He was back in a burning apartment during the hostage rescue, kneeling beside a little boy whose breath slipped away before medics arrived. It punched the air from his lungs. For a moment, he couldn't breathe, couldn't think. But Athena's eye held him. Her gaze wasn't pleading. It was commanding. "Do not fail again." He straightened. "I've got you," he murmured. "All of you." He unzipped his rain jacket, pulling it open against the cold. One by one, he lifted the pups and tucked them inside against his bare chest. Their tiny bodies were icy, but he felt faint warmth returning as he zipped the jacket almost fully shut. Returning to Athena, he cupped her head between his hands. You stay awake. You hear me? Stay awake, warrior. With a groan, he hooked his arms beneath her ribs and heaved. She was heavy, especially with her weakened limb, but adrenaline lent him a strength he didn't know he still possessed. Slowly, agonizingly, he pulled her across the wet floor, her claws scraping softly. Another gust of wind rattled the building, sending debris clattering. A beam snapped overhead, showering dust around them. "Move, Athena," he urged, tugging her toward the narrow gap he had made at the entrance. Every second felt stolen, every heartbeat a countdown. He squeezed through first, dragging her onto the muddy ground outside, then lifted her hindquarters and half-carried, half-slid her toward the patrol car. She whimpered in pain, but her eyes stayed open, locked on him, refusing to surrender. By the time he settled her into the back seat, his arms were shaking violently. Rain lashed his face as he slammed the door and sprinted around to the driver's side. Back at his apartment, the storm continued its assault, but inside, the small space glowed with every lamp Ryan owned. It looked like a fortress of light against the dark, the opposite of the night that had almost claimed them. He wrapped Athena in towels warmed in the dryer, massaged her limbs to restore circulation, replaced her splint with steadier hands than he felt he possessed, and whispered reassurances again and again. The pups, warmed inside his jacket and now resting under a heat lamp he improvised with a desk light, began to squeal with hungry, vibrant life. Hours passed, rain softened, thunder drifted away, and as dawn broke, sunlight spilled through the window, touching Athena's face. She blinked slowly, raising her head. Her nose nudged Ryan's hand, then her pups. He laughed, thin, exhausted, overflowing, and sank back onto the floor, tears silently mixing with sweat on his cheeks. But peace didn't last. A heavy knock rattled the apartment door. Ryan's breath caught. Through the peephole, he saw Captain Mark Cole standing tall in the hallway, raincoat folded over one arm. Beside him, visible through the stairwell window, was a white animal control truck, its logo bright in the morning sun. Athena struggled to her feet, positioning herself between the pups and the door, her posture low but determined. Ryan placed a hand on the doorknob and hesitated, knowing that whatever happened next could take everything from him. Morning sunlight spilled into the small apartment like a curtain of molten gold when Ryan opened the door. Captain Mark Cole stood framed by the brightness, tall and broad-shouldered, his presence as sharp as the crease in his uniform. Up close, every line on his weathered face seemed carved from years of command. Stern brows, square jaw dusted with gray stubble, and eyes that had seen one too many internal affairs cases to be impressed easily. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. His boots left small puddles of evaporating storm water on the floor as he scanned the room. His gaze swept across the chaos that had somehow become a sanctuary. The improvised splints, the empty milk bottles, the hastily assembled heating lamps, the towels scattered like fallen flags. And then his eyes landed on Athena. She stood between Ryan and her pups, her injured leg held slightly off the ground, amber eyes alert yet steady. The three pups tumbled clumsily on the blanket behind her, their fur fluffed from the night of constant drying. Ryan didn't bother defending himself. He simply told the truth. Every detail from the abandoned trap at the container yard, to the collapse of the warehouse roof, to the frantic storm rescue. His voice was steady but low, as though each memory carried the weight of a confession. When he finished, silence pressed into the room. Only the soft whimpers of the pups and the hum of the apartment's aging AC filled the space. Captain Cole exhaled slowly, rubbing a calloused hand across his jaw. "You're a terrible officer when it comes to paperwork, Miller," he muttered. But then his gaze softened. Barely, but enough for Ryan to notice. "Yet somehow, you're the first man I'd want beside me when everything goes to hell." He turned away before the sentiment settled too deeply and pulled out his phone. "Let's call someone who actually knows what to do with dogs." 2 hours later, a dusty silver pickup truck rumbled into the apartment parking lot. Behind the wheel was Sarah Whitlock, a woman in her mid-50s with sun-toughened skin, wheat blonde hair tied in a practical ponytail, and sharp blue eyes that looked as though they were trained to notice everything a human might try to hide. She moved with the calm purpose of someone who had spent her life rescuing animals and weathering people. Sarah stepped into the apartment and crouched immediately in front of Athena. She examined her with steady, knowledgeable hands, pressing gently on muscles, checking pupils, inspecting the limp, with the clinical confidence of someone who had once been a veterinary technician before founding her nonprofit, K9 Rescue Ranch. "She's a fighter," Sarah said with a grin, standing upright again. "Not a pet, a protector, a working dog born to guard something bigger than herself." Then she checked the pups. One nose booped, one belly rubbed, one paw lifted for a closer look. She chuckled. "And these three? Oh, they're trouble. If you keep them in this city, they'll redecorate your apartment with their teeth." She crossed her arms, shifting her weight onto one hip. "But I've got a ranch in northern Texas. Wide fields, fence lines that need patrolling, cattle that follow every coyote rumor in the wind. They'd have purpose there. Space to grow. Space to be what they were meant to be." Ryan swallowed hard. The pups were already gnawing on the strap of his boot, oblivious to the idea of leaving. Athena watched Sarah with cautious interest, but when Ryan knelt beside her, her eyes softened. The moment arrived too quickly. Sarah opened the crate in the truck bed, sunlight glinting off the polished metal. Ryan lifted each pup, their small bodies warm against his palms, and placed them gently inside. They protested with tiny yelps. Then came Athena. She stepped forward with surprising steadiness for a dog still recovering, paused at the edge of the truck bed, and turned back to Ryan. He knelt, burying his fingers in the thick sable fur at her neck. "This isn't goodbye," he whispered. "It's just your next mission." Athena pressed her forehead to his chest, a soldier's salute in the form of a mother's farewell, before climbing into the truck beside her pups, her gaze never leaving him until the latch clicked shut. Months passed. Summer matured into late July, stretching the Texas horizon into endless waves of green and gold. Ryan, now reinstated and reassigned as a K9 training officer, made the long drive out to the ranch, dust swirling behind his cruiser as he pulled up beside the weathered fence. The ranch owner, Harold Boyd, a tall man in his 60s with a sunburned neck, a salt and pepper mustache, and the slow, relaxed gait of someone who had long ago made peace with the land, stood on the porch, tapping ash from his cigarette. "She's something else, that girl," Harold called out, nodding toward the field. "Smartest guardian I ever had. That limp of hers don't slow her, she just thinks faster." Ryan whistled, one sharp, familiar note. From over the ridge, 4 shapes emerged. 3 younger German shepherds sprinted like arrows loosed from a bow, taller now, lean and strong, their coats shimmering under the Texas sun. And behind them came Athena, her gait uneven yet powerful, her head high, her eyes bright as embers. They reached him in a joyful collision of paws and tongues, Athena reached him last, pressing her head gently into his chest with the same slow exhale he remembered from the night she nearly died. As he looked out at the wide expanse, the fields glowing under summer heat, the pack running free in the tall grass, Ryan felt something shift inside him. The guilt, the burden of that one failed rescue, finally loosened. If a broken dog could become a protector again, then so could he. And as the sun set in blazing gold over the Texas fields, Officer Ryan Miller understood that he hadn't just saved a Saitasun family. They had saved him too. In the quiet glow of that Texas sunset, as Athena limped proudly across the fields with her children racing at her side, one truth shimmered brighter than the summer light itself. Sometimes God sends his miracles not as flashes in the sky, but as living hearts placed in our path at the exact moment we need them. Officer Ryan believed he was the one saving Athena, but in truth, God had woven their broken pieces together long before they met. He sent a wounded police dog to a wounded man, so each could carry the other through the storm. He turned failure into forgiveness, pain into purpose, and fear into faith. And that is how God works in our everyday lives. Not always through grand signs, but through small chances, unexpected responsibilities, and quiet moments when he whispers, "Try one more time. Take one more step. Hope is still alive." If you are walking through your own storm today, whether of grief, loneliness, or fear, remember this: God has not forgotten you. Your miracle may already be running toward you, just like Athena racing across that field. Before you go, please take a moment to comment "Amen" if you believe that God still sends help in unexpected ways. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that hope is real. And don't forget to like and subscribe so more hearts around the world can hear stories of faith, love, and second chances. May God bless you, protect your family, and send an Athena into your life exactly when you need her most. Amen.